The young Apache woman got into the rancher's bed almost naked, and what she said changed her destiny. Xiana grew up in a small Apache community on the edge of the desert. Her family's home was modest, made of weathered wood and clay, with cracks that let the cold wind in during winter nights. She had always known life would be difficult, but she had never fully understood just how difficult until she started taking responsibility for her younger siblings. Her mother worked long hours at the local trading post, while her father, once strong and proud, had fallen ill and could no longer provide for the family. From a young age, Ayana had learned to notice the little details that made life manageable. She knew which plants could be used for medicine, which animals to avoid, and how to stretch a small meal into something that could last for days. But she also noticed the limitations imposed by the outside world. The nearby town seemed full of opportunities, yet it felt unreachable, almost forbidden, like a place she could see but never enter. Despite these hardships, Ayana carried a quiet determination. She was intelligent, quick to observe, and deeply empathetic. Her teachers on the reservation had noticed her sharp mind, though resources were scarce and the classes were crowded. She dreamed of learning more, of understanding the world beyond her small community. But those dreams often felt fragile, like a thin thread stretched across a canyon. One evening, after a particularly harsh winter storm, Ayana's family found themselves struggling more than usual. Food was running low, and the wind howled outside, rattling the doors and windows. Her mother, exhausted from a long day at the trading post, sighed as she tried to keep her younger siblings warm. Ayana looked around at her family and felt a pang of helplessness. She wanted to help, to do something to ease their burden, but she felt powerless. Feeling restless and trapped, Ayana decided to take a walk outside. The snow had stopped, leaving the land glistening under the pale light of the moon. The air was sharp and cold, making her cheeks tingle. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and stepped quietly through the snow, thinking that a short walk might clear her mind. But as she wandered farther from home, she realized she had no particular destination in mind. She only knew she needed space to breathe, to feel that life might hold something beyond survival and struggle. As she walked along the edge of the canyon, her eyes caught sight of a small ranch not far from the reservation's boundary. It was a large property with a wooden fence surrounding a few buildings and pastures. The house was warm and inviting, smoke curling from the chimney. For a moment, Ayana felt a pang of longing. The ranch symbolized a different kind of life, one of stability, comfort, and opportunity. She did not know the owner personally, but something about the place drew her closer. Her footsteps carried her unconsciously toward the house. She approached carefully, her mind racing with both fear and curiosity. She knew she was stepping into territory she shouldn't. She was aware that the ranch belonged to someone else, and that entering uninvited could be seen as wrong or dangerous. Yet at that moment, the pull of possibility was stronger than the fear of consequences. The front door was slightly ajar, letting a sliver of light spill into the darkness. The warmth from inside was irresistible. Ayana hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never done anything like this before. She could turn back and return home, but something within her, a mix of courage and desperation, urged her forward. With careful steps, she slipped inside. Inside, the house was simple but well kept. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a soft glow across the room. The smell of wood smoke and something faintly sweet lingered in the air. Ayana's presence did not go unnoticed for long. Eli, the rancher, entered the room from a side hallway. He was a man in his 40s, tall and sturdy, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent working the land. At first, he looked startled, unsure of what to make of the young woman standing before him. Yana's first instinct was to apologize, but the words caught in her throat. She felt exposed, both physically and emotionally, having entered this man's home without permission. She was wearing a thin dress, and the cold had left her shivering. But beyond the physical discomfort, it was her vulnerability that weighed heaviest on her. She felt a deep need to be seen, to be understood, and to be offered a chance, anything that might open a door to a better future. Instead of anger or suspicion, Eli's expression softened. He noticed the fear and uncertainty in her eyes, the weight of responsibility she carried on her young shoulders. There was no malice in her presence, only honesty and desperation. "Why are you here?" he asked gently, his voice calm but curious. Yana took a deep breath and spoke, her words coming slowly at first. She told him about her family, about the struggles they faced, and about her fears for the future. She spoke of her desire to learn, to grow, to find a way to help her people. She did not ask for much, just understanding, maybe a bit of guidance, or a way to survive the harsh winter. Eli listened carefully, absorbing her story without interruption. He was struck by her courage and sincerity. There was something remarkable about this young woman who had faced so much hardship, yet refused to give up hope. Her honesty reminded him of the people in his own life who had inspired him, the moments when someone's vulnerability had revealed their inner strength. After a long pause, Eli spoke. He offered her a seat by the fire and brought her a blanket. He did not question her motives or judge her actions. Instead, he provided warmth and safety, recognizing that this moment could change the trajectory of her life. Yana, feeling the weight of exhaustion lift slightly, accepted the gesture with quiet gratitude. As the fire crackled and the night deepened outside, a fragile trust began to form between them. In that moment, Ayana realized that her life might not be limited to the struggles she had known. There could be opportunities for learning, growth, and even friendship in places she had never imagined. And for Eli, this unexpected encounter reminded him of the importance of kindness, the power of listening, and the potential in every human story. By the time the first hints of dawn crept through the windows, Yana felt a sense of calm she had not known in months. She knew that this night was only the beginning of a journey that would be difficult and uncertain, but it was also full of promise. The rancher's simple act of hospitality had opened a door, not just to a warm room or a hot meal, but to the possibility of a life where her courage and honesty could shape her destiny. Yana left the ranch the next morning with a small sense of hope. She had taken a risk, stepping into the unknown, but she had found something unexpected in return: understanding, trust, and a glimpse of a future that she might yet claim for herself. And though she did not know the full path ahead, she felt ready to face it, step by step, with the quiet strength she had always carried inside her. The morning after her unexpected visit to the ranch, Ayana returned home quietly, her thoughts a jumble of emotions. She had never imagined that one evening could change how she saw the world. The warmth of the fire, the kindness of Eli, and the simple conversation they had shared lingered in her mind like a faint glow in the dark. At the same time, she felt a mix of fear and excitement. What had she done? Could she ever go back to that house? And yet, she knew she could not ignore the possibility that it could mark the beginning of something important in her life. Back at home, the family's struggles seemed heavier than ever. Her younger siblings were restless, their stomachs growling as they tried to find something to eat. Her mother looked tired beyond words, her hands raw from work, and her father sat quietly by the window, staring into the distance. Yana could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her chest. She wanted to help, but the options before her were limited. Work in town was scarce, and there was very little money to go around. As the days passed, Ayana could not stop thinking about Eli and the warmth of the ranch. She remembered the quiet way he had listened to her story, the simple gestures of care, and the unspoken respect in his eyes. She realized that beyond the immediate kindness, there was something more profound, a sense that someone in the world saw her for who she truly was, beyond her poverty and struggles. That thought filled her with a strange mix of courage and hope. One afternoon, after much deliberation, she made a decision. She would return to the ranch, not as a thief or an intruder, but as someone willing to work and learn. She hoped that Eli might understand her intentions. She wanted to offer her help in any way possible, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to gain knowledge and skills that could change her life. The journey back was quiet, each step through the snow crunching under her feet as she wrestled with nerves and anticipation. When Ayanna reached the ranch, she paused at the edge of the fence. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could see the smoke rising from the chimney and the faint movement inside the house. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the courage she had carried all her life. With careful steps, she approached the front door. This time, she knocked gently, giving a signal of respect rather than fear. Eli opened the door, and at first, there was a flicker of surprise on his face. Then he noticed the resolve in her eyes. "Yana," he said softly, as if naming her aloud gave her presence legitimacy. "You came back." She nodded, feeling a little shy but determined. I want to help," she said. "I can do chores, cook, clean, whatever is needed. I also want to learn if you can teach me." Her voice was steady, though a little trembling with emotion. Eli studied her for a long moment. He could see the honesty in her eyes, the sincerity of her request. There was no pretense, no manipulation, just a young woman seeking a chance to make something of herself. After a pause, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "If you are willing to work hard, I will give you a place here." His tone was gentle but firm. "But this is not a game. You must respect the house, the land, and the rules." Yana smiled, relief washing over her. She promised herself that she would work tirelessly, not only to repay his kindness, but to prove to herself that she could rise above her circumstances. She spent the first few days learning the rhythm of the ranch. She fed the animals, cleaned the stables, chopped firewood, and cooked meals. Her hands grew calloused, and her muscles ached in ways she was not used to, but she embraced every task as a lesson in perseverance and responsibility. Eli, meanwhile, began to teach her practical skills. He showed her how to read the labels on medicine bottles, how to track expenses, and even how to manage a small ledger for the ranch. At first, Ayanna struggled, unsure of herself and afraid of making mistakes. But Eli encouraged her gently, praising her efforts and correcting her patiently. Slowly, she began to gain confidence, not only in practical tasks but in her belief that she could learn and achieve more than she had ever imagined. As the days turned into weeks, Ayanna started to notice subtle changes in herself. She became more aware of her surroundings, more disciplined in her work, and more confident in speaking her mind. She began to dream again, not just of survival, but of a future where she could help her family and community. The ranch became a place of growth and discovery, a place where she learned that kindness could exist even in the most unexpected circumstances, and that effort combined with guidance could open doors previously thought closed. Eli also began to notice changes in himself. He had lived a solitary life since the death of his wife, focused on maintaining the ranch and keeping to routines. But Ayanna's presence brought a new energy into the household. He admired her determination, her courage, and the quiet wisdom in her observations. Her questions about the land, the animals, and even his own life forced him to reflect and remember the joy of teaching and mentoring. In helping her, he discovered a renewed sense of purpose. One cold evening, as the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ayanna and Eli sat together by the fire. She had just finished her chores, her hands warm from washing dishes and tending to the fire. They spoke quietly about her dreams, her fears, and her hopes for the future. She confessed her longing to learn more, to explore opportunities beyond the reservation, and to make a difference for her people. Eli listened intently, impressed by the clarity and maturity in her words. "You have more courage than many people twice your age," he said finally. "You are willing to step into the unknown, to work hard and to learn. That is a rare quality." Yana felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She realized that this ranch, this unusual opportunity, was more than just a place to survive. It was a place to grow, to dream, and to begin shaping her own destiny. Over time, their days settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for chores and tending to the animals, afternoons for lessons and learning practical skills, and evenings for reflection and quiet conversation. Yana began to notice that the ranch was not only a source of work, but also a place of safety and understanding. She could share her thoughts without fear of judgment, ask questions without shame, and learn from mistakes without punishment. Each small success, from balancing the ledger to successfully cooking a meal, felt like a victory, reinforcing her belief in her own abilities. Word of Ayana's presence at the ranch eventually reached others in the community. Some were curious, others skeptical, but most were quietly impressed. They had seen her struggle and knew her circumstances were difficult. They whispered among themselves about the unusual partnership between the young Apache woman and the rancher, but they could not deny the growth and confidence that now shone in Ayana's demeanor. Through her experiences, Ayana began to understand that life was a series of choices, each with consequences and lessons. She learned that courage did not mean the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. She realized that trust and respect were earned, and that kindness could create opportunities even in the harshest conditions. Most importantly, she understood that her destiny was not fixed. It could be shaped by her decisions, her efforts, and her determination to learn and grow. By the end of her first winter at the ranch, Ayana had transformed in subtle but powerful ways. She had gained practical skills, confidence, and a sense of hope that had previously been absent from her life. The young woman who had arrived shivering and uncertain now moved with purpose, her head held high, her eyes bright with determination. She knew that the journey ahead would still be challenging, but she also knew she was no longer facing it alone. Eli watched her one evening as she tended to the animals, her movements steady and confident. He felt a quiet pride in her progress, recognizing that he had played only a small role in a transformation that was truly her own. She had stepped into his life unexpectedly, but in doing so, she had opened a door for both of them. A door to growth, understanding, and the possibility of a future neither had anticipated. And so life at the ranch continued, a delicate balance of work, learning, and quiet companionship. For Ayana, every day brought new lessons, challenges, and opportunities to prove her resilience and intelligence. And with each passing day, the young Apache woman began to see that her life was no longer defined solely by hardship or scarcity, but by the potential that could be realized when courage, honesty, and opportunity met. As spring slowly arrived, the ranch began to awaken from its long, harsh winter. The snow melted, revealing patches of green grass and the first signs of life returning to the land. For Ayana, the new season brought a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She had grown comfortable with the daily routine of chores, learning, and small achievements, but now she faced new challenges that tested not only her skills but also her patience and confidence. One morning, Eli asked her to help with the cattle. The task seemed simple at first, but it quickly turned into a lesson in perseverance and adaptability. The animals were restless, the fences were old, and the open field offered little control over their movements. Yana had to think quickly, anticipate the animals' reactions, and act decisively. At first, she struggled. She was afraid of making mistakes, worried she might cause harm or fail in front of Eli. Her hands trembled as she tried to guide the herd, and several times an animal broke free, causing a moment of chaos. Eli watched quietly, offering advice and support when necessary, but he allowed her to make mistakes. "You learn more from mistakes than from success," he told her, his voice calm but firm. "Don't be afraid of failure. It's part of life." Yana took a deep breath and tried again, this time more carefully, observing the cattle's movements and predicting their behavior. Slowly, she gained control, her confidence growing with each small victory. The relief she felt when the last animal was safely back in the pen was immense. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to keep trying despite it. While the physical challenges of ranch life were demanding, Yana also faced emotional struggles. News from home was often troubling. Her mother's health was unstable, and her younger siblings faced difficulties at school and in the community. Yana worried constantly about them, feeling the heavy burden of responsibility even as she tried to build a new life at the ranch. Some days, the weight of these worries made her question her choices. She wondered if she had been selfish to leave, even temporarily, to pursue opportunities for learning and growth. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting day tending to both the land and her chores, Yana sat quietly near the river that ran past the ranch. The water sparkled in the sunlight, but she could not shake the heaviness in her chest. She thought about her family, her community, and the life she had left behind. She wondered if she was strong enough to handle the challenges ahead. For the first time, tears filled her eyes, and she allowed herself to cry openly, releasing months of bottled-up emotion. The wind rustled the trees, and for a moment, it felt as if nature itself was listening to her struggles, offering quiet comfort without judgment. Eli noticed her absence from the usual chores and went to find her. He found Ayana sitting by the river, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her face wet with tears. He sat beside her without saying a word at first, simply sharing the quiet space. After a while he spoke gently. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed. You've carried so much on your own for so long. You don't have to do it alone anymore." Yana looked at him, surprised by the simple kindness in his words. She realized that she had been so focused on proving herself that she had forgotten it was acceptable to seek support. I just feel like I'm failing sometimes," she admitted. "There's so much to do, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough." Eli nodded knowingly. Strength isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about facing what scares you and continuing to move forward. You've done that every day since you came here. You are stronger than you think. His words gave her a new perspective. She began to understand that struggle was not a sign of weakness, but a natural part of growth. Every challenge, every mistake, and every moment of doubt was shaping her into a more resilient, capable person. She returned to her chores with renewed determination, still aware of her fears but willing to confront them rather than run from them. As the weeks passed, Ayana faced another significant challenge: learning to manage the ranch's small store of supplies. The inventory included food, tools, and essential materials for maintaining the land and caring for the animals. It required organization, careful counting, and attention to detail. At first, the task seemed overwhelming. She struggled to balance the records, track the quantities, and plan for future needs. Errors were inevitable, and some days she felt frustrated and defeated. But Eli encouraged her to persevere. He taught her methods for organization, ways to double-check her work, and techniques for prioritizing tasks. Slowly, Ayana began to master the system. She discovered a natural aptitude for managing resources and planning ahead. Each small success reinforced her belief that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. By the end of the season, she was managing the supplies with confidence and precision, a source of pride for both herself and Eli. Amid these practical challenges, Ayana also experienced moments of self-discovery. She realized that her fears often stemmed from a lack of trust in herself. She had spent so long believing that her circumstances defined her that she had forgotten to recognize her own strength, intelligence, and resilience. The lessons she learned at the ranch were not only about practical skills, but also about self-awareness and inner courage. One day, while working with Eli on repairing a fence, she paused to look at the land stretching out before her. The sun was high, the sky a brilliant blue, and the field seemed endless. She felt a sense of possibility she had never known. "I used to think life was just about surviving," she said quietly, "but now I see that there's so much more. There's a chance to build, to grow, to create something meaningful." Eli smiled. "And you're doing exactly that. You're taking control of your life one step at a time." That's how real change happens. Despite the progress, life was not without setbacks. One morning, a storm swept across the ranch, bringing heavy rain and wind. Some of the fences were damaged and several animals had escaped. Gianna and Eli spent the entire day repairing the damage and rounding up the livestock. It was exhausting, physically and mentally, and Ayana's muscles ached more than ever before. At times, she felt like giving up, but she reminded herself of how far she had come and of the lessons she had learned about persistence and resilience. That evening, as they finally finished the repairs, Eli placed a hand on her shoulder. "You didn't give up," he said. "Even when it was hard, you kept going. That's what matters. That's what makes you strong." Yana nodded, feeling a quiet pride swell in her chest. She realized that struggle was not something to fear. It was an opportunity to grow, to discover what she was truly capable of. Another challenge arose when Ayana's family faced a sudden financial crisis. Her father's health worsened, and her mother struggled to cover the cost of medicine and supplies. Yana felt torn between her responsibilities at the ranch and her desire to support her family. She wrote letters home, sent small amounts of money she had saved, and offered guidance on how to stretch their resources. Though she could not solve all their problems, she found ways to help, and in doing so, she learned the power of creativity, resourcefulness, and determination in the face of adversity. Through all these trials, Ayana's bond with Eli deepened, not in a romantic sense, but as mentor and student, guide and learner. He had become someone she could rely on, someone who saw her potential and nurtured it with patience and care. Their relationship was built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding, a foundation that allowed her to grow without fear of judgment. By the end of the season, Ayana had transformed in remarkable ways. She had faced physical, emotional, and practical challenges that tested her courage and perseverance. She had learned to manage responsibilities, solve problems, and trust in her own abilities. She had discovered resilience she did not know she possessed, and a quiet confidence began to shine in her actions and demeanor. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Ayana sat quietly on a fence post, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. She remembered the first night she had entered the ranch, shivering and uncertain, and compared it to who she had become now. The young woman who had arrived full of fear and doubt had grown into someone capable of facing challenges head-on, someone who understood that strength came not from avoiding struggle, but from confronting it with courage and determination. Yana smiled to herself, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew that the path ahead would not always be easy, but she also knew she was stronger, wiser, and more capable than she had ever imagined. She had faced obstacles, endured hardships, and learned invaluable lessons about perseverance, courage, and self-belief. And she understood that these experiences were shaping not only her present but her future, opening doors to possibilities she had never dared to dream of. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Ayana whispered quietly, "I will keep going. I will keep learning. I will keep growing." And in that moment, she felt a sense of purpose and determination that would guide her through the challenges yet to come, confident that she could face whatever life had in store. Spring had fully arrived, and the ranch was alive with movement. The animals grazed in the fields, the flowers began to bloom along the edges of the property, and the days grew longer and warmer. For Ayana, the change in season brought a sense of renewal. She had spent months learning, working, and growing, and she began to feel a shift deep inside herself. The challenges she had faced over winter and early spring had shaped her into a stronger, more capable young woman. Yet she sensed there was something more waiting for her, an opportunity, a turning point that could change her life in ways she had only dreamed of. One morning, Eli called her into the main house. He held a stack of papers, his face serious but with a spark of anticipation in his eyes. "Ayanna," he said, "I want to show you something." She approached cautiously, curious about what could be so important. Eli laid out the papers on the table. They were old ledgers and records of the ranch's business, including transactions, debts, and community supplies. "I've been keeping track of all of this for years," he said, "but I think it's time you learned how to handle it." Yana's heart raced. She had learned the basics of organization and record-keeping, but this was a much larger responsibility. I don't know if I can do it," she admitted, feeling a flicker of doubt. Eli smiled kindly. "You've handled far more than you realize. I've seen your dedication, your attention to detail, and your ability to learn quickly. You're ready for this. But remember, it's not just about following numbers. It's about understanding people, their needs, and the choices they make." For the next few weeks, Ayanna immersed herself in the ledgers. She learned how to track supplies, plan purchases, and anticipate future needs. She discovered patterns in the community's demands, understanding which resources were most important and how best to distribute them. At first, it was overwhelming. She would stay up late, her eyes tired from poring over numbers and notes, feeling unsure if she was making the right decisions. But Eli was always there to guide her, patiently explaining when she made errors and encouraging her when she succeeded. Through this work, Ayanna began to experience a breakthrough. She realized that her mind was capable of organizing and solving problems in ways she had never imagined. The same young woman who had once felt powerless and trapped now held a level of understanding and influence that allowed her to make a real difference in the lives of others. This realization gave her a sense of purpose she had long been searching for, a sense that her choices mattered, and that she could actively shape her future. The turning point came one afternoon when the community faced a sudden challenge. A shipment of essential supplies for both the reservation and surrounding areas had been delayed due to a storm. Families relied on these resources for food, medicine, and basic necessities, and the shortage caused worry and tension. Eli turned to Ayanna. "This is your moment," he said. "You can manage this. I trust you." Ayanna felt a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the responsibility was great, but she also realized that she had learned the skills necessary to handle it. She worked tirelessly, reorganizing what was available, prioritizing the most urgent needs, and coordinating with local families to ensure fairness and efficiency. She made careful calculations, checked every detail, and anticipated potential problems before they arose. By evening, the crisis was under control. Families received the supplies they needed, and the community expressed gratitude for the organization and care that had gone into handling the situation. Ayanna felt a sense of triumph unlike anything she had experienced before. She realized that her abilities were not just theoretical, they had practical, real-world impact. She could influence outcomes, help people, and solve problems. The young woman who had once wandered into a stranger's house seeking shelter had now become a capable and reliable figure in her community. This experience marked a profound turning point for Ayanna. She understood that life was no longer a series of random events to survive, but a set of challenges to face with skill, courage, and determination. She discovered the power of planning, problem-solving, and trusting herself. She also realized that guidance and support from others like Eli could amplify her abilities, turning potential into reality. Around the same time, Ayanna began to think more deeply about her long-term goals. She had always dreamed of learning and helping her community, but now she saw a tangible path forward. She envisioned establishing programs to teach literacy, practical skills, and leadership to other young women in her community, those who, like her, faced barriers and uncertainty. She imagined creating opportunities for them to grow, to feel capable, and to realize that their potential was not limited by circumstances. One evening, she shared these thoughts with Eli. "I want to do more than just manage the ranch," she said. "I want to help people like me. I want to give them the chance to learn, to grow, and to make choices that shape their lives." Eli looked at her with a mixture of pride and admiration. "That is a noble goal," he said, "and I believe you can do it. You've already shown that you can take responsibility, face challenges, and find solutions. Now it's about extending that influence to others. But remember, every step takes time and effort. Be patient with yourself and with them." Encouraged by his words, Ayanna began to take action. She organized small gatherings in the ranch's barn, inviting young women from her community to learn practical skills such as reading, writing, and basic financial planning. She shared her experiences, teaching them not just techniques but also lessons about resilience, patience, and courage. Her warmth and sincerity inspired trust, and slowly the group began to grow. Ayanna also began to see changes in herself that went beyond skills and knowledge. She felt a newfound sense of confidence in her identity, her heritage, and her abilities. She no longer saw herself as powerless or limited by circumstance. Instead, she recognized her potential to influence outcomes, make meaningful choices, and inspire others. The young woman who had once wandered into the ranch seeking refuge had transformed into a young leader, capable of shaping her own life and the lives of those around her. At the same time, Ayanna faced moments of doubt. Some community members were skeptical of her initiatives, questioning whether a young woman could lead or make meaningful change. Others whispered about her unusual connection with Eli, misunderstanding the nature of their relationship. Each challenge tested her patience, resilience, and determination, but she drew strength from the lessons she had learned, that perseverance, honesty, and hard work could overcome skepticism and fear. One day, a young girl approached her during a gathering at the barn. She held a small notebook in her hands and looked at Ayanna with wide, hopeful eyes. "I want to learn," she said softly. "Will you teach me?" Ayanna felt a wave of emotion. She remembered herself at that age, uncertain, overwhelmed, and searching for guidance. She smiled warmly and nodded. "Yes," she said, "I will teach you, and I will help you see that you are capable of more than you realize." This moment reinforced Ayanna's sense of purpose. She realized that her journey was no longer just about her own growth. It was about creating opportunities for others, inspiring courage, and helping others find their own path. She began to see the ripple effect of her actions. Every skill she taught, every lesson she shared, had the potential to change lives beyond her own. By the end of Part 4, Ayanna had truly come into her own. She had faced challenges that tested her abilities, learned to trust herself, and begun to extend her influence to others in her community. The turning point in her life was clear. She had discovered her power, her purpose, and the knowledge that she could shape her destiny through courage, persistence, and action. And as the sun set over the hills surrounding the ranch, casting a golden glow over the fields and the barn, Ayanna stood tall and confident. She knew that the journey ahead would still be filled with challenges, but she also understood that she was ready. She had the skills, the courage, and the vision to face whatever came next. The young Apache woman who had once wandered into a stranger's house seeking shelter had now become a beacon of hope, determination, and inspiration, both for herself and for those who would follow her lead. Summer had fully arrived at the ranch, and the land was alive with vibrant colors. Wildflowers bloomed along the fences, The animals roamed freely in the open pastures, and the warm sun cast a golden glow over everything it touched. For Ayanna, the season reflected her own growth. She felt a sense of completeness, a harmony between the skills she had learned, the challenges she had faced, and the person she had become. Every day brought opportunities to apply her knowledge, inspire others, and continue building the life she had long dreamed of. The community gatherings she had begun organizing grew steadily. Young women and girls from nearby families came to the ranch regularly, eager to learn new skills, improve their literacy, and gain practical knowledge about finances, farming, and self-reliance. Ayanna taught them with patience, using the lessons she had learned through months of hard work and dedication. She shared her story openly, her struggles, her mistakes, her triumphs, so that others could see that growth came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with courage and determination. One day, as Ayanna helped a group of girls practice reading and writing, she noticed a young girl struggling to spell a word. Ayanna knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to make mistakes," she said softly. "That's how we learn. Keep trying and you'll succeed." The girl's eyes lit up and she tried again, this time spelling the word correctly. Ayanna smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart that she had never experienced before. She realized that her influence extended beyond teaching skills. It inspired confidence, self-belief, and hope. Her work did not go unnoticed. Families in the community began to express their gratitude, acknowledging the positive impact she had on their children and on the broader neighborhood. They saw a young woman who had transformed her own life and was now helping others transform theirs. Some initially doubted her, questioning whether a young woman from the reservation could lead and teach effectively. But over time, their skepticism turned to respect and admiration as they witnessed the results of her dedication and hard work. Even Eli noticed the remarkable changes in Ayanna. He had watched her grow from a timid, uncertain girl into a capable, confident young woman. He saw the leadership she demonstrated, the compassion she showed to others, and the resilience she had cultivated through every challenge. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch of the ranch house, he spoke quietly. "You've done something remarkable, Ayanna. You've taken everything life gave you and turned it into an opportunity, not just for yourself, but for others. That's rare and precious." Ayanna felt a wave of gratitude. She had come to the ranch seeking shelter and a chance to survive, but what she had found was so much more: mentorship, guidance, and a place where her courage and determination could flourish. She realized that life had given her a second chance, one she could now use to create opportunities not only for herself, but for her community. As summer progressed, Ayanna faced new challenges, but she approached them with the skills and confidence she had developed. One particularly demanding task involved coordinating a supply distribution for several neighboring communities. She had to plan the logistics, communicate with families, and ensure fairness in the distribution process. At first, she felt overwhelmed, but she drew on the lessons she had learned through her experiences at the ranch. She carefully organized the supplies, delegated tasks to the girls she had been teaching, and maintained calm and clear communication throughout the process. By the end of the day, the distribution was a success. Families received the supplies they needed, and the community praised Ayanna for her leadership and dedication. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It was no longer enough to simply survive or meet her own needs. She had discovered the joy and purpose that came from helping others and creating positive change. Through these experiences, Ayanna also began to reflect on her personal growth. She remembered the first night she had entered Eli's home, shivering and uncertain. She thought about how far she had come, from a young woman unsure of her place in the world to someone capable of leading, teaching, and inspiring. Every obstacle she had faced, the long, exhausting chores, the moments of doubt, the crises at the ranch, had contributed to the person she had become. She understood now that her strength was not only in her abilities, but also in her resilience, her determination, and her willingness to embrace challenges. Gianna's relationship with Eli remained strong, built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. They had become a team, each supporting the other in their shared responsibilities. While their bond was not romantic, it was deeply meaningful, rooted in mentorship, friendship, and shared purpose. Eli continued to provide guidance, but he also allowed Gianna to take the lead, encouraging her to make decisions and trust her instincts. He understood that the best way to teach was to let her learn through experience, even when mistakes were made. One afternoon, Gianna received a letter from her family. Her father's health had improved, and her mother wrote about how proud they were of her. Her younger siblings shared stories of how they had begun to implement the lessons she had taught them about perseverance and responsibility. Reading the letter, Gianna felt a sense of connection and accomplishment. She realized that the choices she had made, the risks she had taken, and the work she had invested had created positive ripples that extended far beyond the ranch. Inspired by this realization, Gianna began to plan a more formal program for her community. She envisioned a small center where young women could learn literacy, practical skills, and leadership, all in a supportive and safe environment. She wanted the center to be a place where courage and determination were nurtured, where girls could see that their circumstances did not define them, and where they could begin shaping their own destinies. Over the next several months, she worked tirelessly to make her vision a reality. She organized resources, coordinated with families, and recruited volunteers. Eli provided guidance and support, but Gianna's determination and leadership drove the project forward. Slowly, the center took shape, a modest building near the ranch that became a hub of learning, creativity, and empowerment. When the center officially opened, the community gathered to celebrate. Young women, families, and neighbors came together to witness what Gianna had accomplished. She stood at the front, addressing the crowd with a calm confidence she had never known before. She spoke about resilience, courage, and the power of education, sharing her own story as an example of what could be achieved through determination and hard work. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at the faces of those who had supported her journey and those whose lives she hoped to impact. She realized that every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every step she had taken had led to this point. The young woman who had once wandered into a stranger's home seeking warmth and shelter had now created a space that would empower countless others. As the years passed, Gianna continued to grow and expand her impact. The center flourished, providing education, mentorship, and opportunity for young women in the community. Many of those she had taught went on to pursue their own dreams, inspired by her example. Gianna's work created a ripple effect, transforming not only individual lives but the community as a whole. Through it all, she never forgot the lessons she had learned at the ranch, the importance of courage, perseverance, honesty, and trust. She knew that her achievements were not solely the result of her own effort. They were also the product of the guidance, support, and opportunities provided by Eli and the experiences that had shaped her journey. She carried these lessons with her always, sharing them with others and using them to navigate new challenges and opportunities. In the quiet moments, Gianna would sometimes reflect on her journey. She remembered the cold night she had entered the ranch, shivering and uncertain, and marveled at how far she had come. She realized that life was not just about survival, it was about growth, impact, and purpose. She understood that every choice, every act of courage, and every effort to learn and improve could shape the future in meaningful ways. And so, Gianna's story became one of hope and inspiration. She had transformed her own life through courage, determination, and hard work, and she had created opportunities for countless others to do the same. The young Apache woman who had once wandered into a stranger's home almost by chance had now become a leader, a mentor, and a beacon of possibility. Her destiny, once uncertain, had been rewritten through resilience, vision, and the unwavering belief that she could shape her own future. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Ayanna stood at the edge of the fields, looking out over the land that had become her home and her classroom. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities she had been given, but for the journey itself, the challenges, the lessons, and the growth that had brought her to this moment. She knew that the future would continue to hold challenges, but she also knew that she was ready. Ayanna whispered quietly to herself, a promise and a declaration. I will continue to learn, to grow, and to help others. I will use what I have gained to make a difference. This is only the beginning. And in that moment, under the vast sky and the golden light of the setting sun, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had faced her fears, embraced her opportunities, and stepped fully into the life she had always dreamed of, a life of purpose, impact, and hope.